God revealed himself to Abraham, to Moses, and the giving of the law as he spoke to the prophets, love was always the most important thing. Jews were taught to memorize and recite, to wear around their necks, to write on their doorposts. That part of Deuteronomy called the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your mind, and all your soul. And then added to that, love your neighbor as yourself. We are commanded to love God with everything we have. We are commanded to love our neighbors as well. So why do we do that? What is it that divides us? What is it that separates us from that kind of love? Also, since the beginning, there have been forces at play that don't want us to get along, that don't want us to love. There have been forces at play that are sometimes very obvious and sometimes quite subtle, that slither into our lives and get us to try to take a bite out of whatever it is that separates us from God. Those kinds of divisions are many. And through the years, there have been many things that they have shown to be. Today, it's things like social injustice. It's the environment or climate change. Things that we should be able to get together and agree upon, but for whatever reason, seems to divide us even more. Something as simple as a virus that has taken over our entire planet should be a matter of health care. What's the best thing to do and the best way to do it, to get past this, to get beyond this? But we can't agree on this for one reason, because it has been politicized. You can't talk about this anymore. You can't talk about social justice, defunding the police, or do we need more police? You can't talk about the environment or climate change. Because if you do, you are going to be called names, you're going to be labeled, you are going to be deplorable, you're going to be a conspiracy theorist, you're going to be a bigot, you're going to be an idiot. We just can't do it anymore. Because, like the virus, things have been so politicized. And then, of course, politics. That's a great example of division. Now, people have been fighting over politics far longer than this country has been around. And even in our own country's history, we have had people in Congress who have fought each other, attacked each other, even killed each other, because they differed in their political beliefs. But lately, politics has taken on a life of its own. Families have been torn apart, best friends can no longer speak. You can't even bring the subject up again, because you will be labeled, you will be called names. You aren't woke enough, you're too woke, you aren't politically correct, whatever you want to call it. We can't do it. Because some people dare to think that maybe Biden is on the right track. Or some people dare to think that maybe the previous administration did have some good ideas. Maybe Donald Trump wasn't all that bad. Oh my God, I said his name. And what do you know? Lightning didn't strike, the earth didn't stop spinning. Isn't that amazing? We're called to love each other. We're called to love God. But we are so completely divided. Another great example of division is one that I find interesting. And that is the concept of race. I find it interesting because it's ironic. And it's ironic because it doesn't exist. There is no scientific or medical basis basis of the concept of race. All humans on this planet have 99.9% of the same DNA. The 0.1% that we don't share has nothing to do with the amount of melanin that pigments our skin. But race is something that so clearly divides us. And it was completely made up. Made up by people as a way to divide groups of people from each other so that one group could justify what they did to another group. Now, I certainly agree that there are ethnic and cultural differences between people around the world. I also understand that racism exists. But race is just man-made and made up. Yet it divides us so completely. If you take a jar and put red ants and black ants in the same jar, nothing happens. You shake that jar up and put it out on the ground, they will start to fight. They will bite each other's heads off, they will bite each other's legs off, they will bite each other in half, and even mortally wounded. They will fight to the death. They have no idea why they're fighting. They don't know who shook the jar. They just fight. We're the same way. We have been told, and we have been taught, and we have been conditioned to fight, to be divided. One thing to remember is that these forces that are at play in our lives are very clever. They will sneak up and saddle up next to us and make us think that it's okay. We can get along with that. And then before too long, it takes over a little bit more and a little bit more, and then we're divided. We're divided because there are people who benefit when we don't get along. There are people who like it when we don't love. Because maybe they keep their power, or make more money, or get better ratings, or get more votes. Whatever the reason, they like to keep things stirred up and to go right along with it without even thinking. We're keeping our head down. And we have no idea who's shaking the jar. We just fight. So why can't we see the truth? If the truth is the truth, why can't we see it? This church has been here for 30 years, and those of us who worship here are humbled by the fact that so many people have come before us to make St. Margaret's a beacon of love for our community. It's a beautiful facility. And for those of you who aren't already looking out the window, I want you to look past this beautiful cross. Look out that window. You can look out this window, Adam, and see the same thing. Look out the window and you can see the sky. And I ask you, what color is the sky? Gray? Right, it's gray. I can go around the room, every single one of you, gray, gray. It's gray because it is gray. That's the truth. The sky is gray. Hallelujah. There's more than two people here and we agree on something. We agree on the truth, and the truth is that sky is gray. And as we're congratulating ourselves and patting each other on the back and talking about how wonderful we are for finally getting along, I say, no, it's blue. Huh. Yeah, and you think, okay, that's funny. Either I'm stupid or I'm colorblind. But for whatever reason, I won't agree with you that that sky is gray. But it's gray, right? No, it's blue. And maybe you're triggered by inaccurate sky color, and you get mad, and you get angry that I won't agree with you that that sky that you can see right there, that sky is gray. It's blue. Now you're ready to fight. And you are going to rear back and hit me as hard as you can in the face because I will not agree with you to the truth. And the truth is that sky is gray, right? Just say it. Say it's gray. Let's get on with this. Make whatever point you want to make and let's move on. But quit saying that the sky is blue because it's gray. say that to begin with, right? Now we get it. Now we see what you're saying. A minute ago, you were ready to fight, to hit me, to hate me, because I wouldn't agree with you. And now, suddenly, we all agree. And why? Because we had an opportunity to actually see what we were talking about, to communicate. We didn't have a difference of opinion. We didn't have a difference of fact. We had a difference of perspective. When I was born, the house that I grew up in was almost already 60 years old, and in the yard, there were several mature maple trees. And in the fall, it would put on a show, yellow, orange, red, beautiful. If you've ever been to northwest Arkansas or to the northeast, places like Vermont, you know what I'm talking about. And we have maple trees here, but when you see a whole bunch of them together, it's gorgeous. Funny thing about a maple leaf, any deciduous tree leaf for that matter, but in the spring when the leaves come on, they're kind of a light color green. That gets a little bit darker as the season progresses, and that's because trees have chlorophyll. Trees use chlorophyll to convert carbon dioxide into sugar. It uses the sugar for energy, for fuel. And it expels a byproduct, a little something we call oxygen. That's the reason every single one of us on the planet are alive today, by the way. But as the fall comes on and the days shorten, the green starts to fade away. And underneath you see the color. The orange, the yellow, the red. The point is, that's the way a maple tree looks all the time. You just can't see it because your vision is clouded by the green. I admit, it's a little bit odd to think, when you look at a maple tree in the middle of the summer, that it's just as gorgeous as it is in the fall. But it really is. You just don't appreciate it. You don't see it. And that's the way that people are. We're not willing to look beyond what we think we see. We are not willing to look beyond what we are told to see, what we are conditioned to see. And because of that, we miss so much of the beauty, so much of the love. 2,000 years after Abraham, 1,500 years after Moses and the law, hundreds of years after the prophets, God's next great expression of love occurred in the birth of Jesus, something we celebrated yesterday, the birth of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. An expression of love second only to God's greatest expression with Jesus' subsequent death and resurrection and our salvation. But Jesus came on the scene, and as God finally had the opportunity to be with us, he cleared up some things for us. He told us some of the things that we were doing right and some of the things that we were doing wrong. And Jesus talked about love. He talked about division. He said that a house divided cannot stand. And whether your house is your family, this church, all Christians, all Americans, all people, the concept is the same. Divided, we will fall, and great will be the fall of that house. Jesus talked about man-made precepts, laws, rules, regulations that were preventing us from loving God the way we should. And because of that, people were stumbling, people were failing. And that upset Jesus, rightly so. Because people were using things that were just made up by people and preventing them from being closer to God. Sound familiar? If we are called Everybody's different. But if you watch CNN and you think that half the country are a bunch of right-wing nut jobs who are trying to ruin this country, quit watching CNN. If you watch Fox News and you think that half the country are a bunch of blue-collar nut jobs trying to ruin this country, quit watching Fox News. If you go on Facebook and you like to share stories and information with your family, if you like to read uplifting stories, if you like to watch videos of kittens, good for you. But if you go on Facebook and you find yourself degenerating into someone you don't really want to be, angry, bitter, upset at what you read because somebody has the audacity, the unmitigated gall to actually have an opinion different than yours. Who do they think they are? And you find yourself in some comment thread saying things to people that you would never say to their face. You would never say in polite company. And that kind of anger and bitterness, if that's how you feel when you go on Facebook, delete your account. What do you think Jesus meant when he said, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out? It's better to go to heaven with one eye than to hell with perfect vision. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Better to go to heaven with one hand than to hell whole. Our faith does not promote or condone self-mutilation. Obviously, Jesus did not mean that, literally. Jesus meant find those things in your life that are causing you to be separated from God and from loving each other and cutting them out. Better to go to heaven without Facebook than to hell with your latest video going viral. Better to go to heaven without Twitter than to hell with 100,000 followers. You ask yourself, can I live without social media? A better question is, can you live with it? So, Jesus tells us, and was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your mind, and all your soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. This is nothing new. This had been said for 2,000 years. But then Jesus did something that was different, something that was new, something that was radical. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your mind, and all your heart, and all your soul, and love your neighbors as yourself. And love your enemies as well. Enemies. Will Rogers once said that he never met a man he didn't like. I believe he was probably sincere, but I also believe that he never met my ex-business partner, or your ex-husband, or your ex-wife. He never met that person that lied and cheated and got that promotion that you so richly deserve. He never met the person that abused you. So if we could bring Jesus here today to kind of clear up some of this, to clarify this whole enemy thing, that Jesus, what about that guy that tried to ruin you? That did everything he could, walked away scot-free. But Jesus, what about those people who seem to make it their mission to make our lives miserable? But Jesus, what about those people that have abused us? But Jesus, what about those people that want to blow us up? And they say that God is telling them that that's what they're supposed to do. But Jesus, what about those people? Now, we hope at this point that Jesus would say something along the lines of, you know what? The Bible's a big book, but it's not big enough for everything. Of course there's loopholes. Of course there's exceptions, right? It's not what Jesus would say. But Jesus, what about those people that have hurt us so bad? What about those people that have caused causes so much pain, so much anger, so much heartache. That Jesus, what about those people that hate us? But Jesus, what about those? Jesus would say, those but. And he would look directly at every single one of us. And with tears in his eyes and compassion in his voice, he would say, those people, those bad people, I understand what you're saying. I see what you mean. I feel your pain. Those people, those bad people, they're the ones you're supposed to love the most. I don't know about you, but that was hard. How do you love your enemies? Where do you even start? No one suggests that you go back into an abusive relationship. No one suggests that we ever go into any situation where we put ourselves in harm's way. Sometimes, the only thing that you can do for those bad people in your life is to pray for them. And here are HR kids. My parents, that's something. Look, I get it. I understand. And maybe at first you just go alone somewhere and sit quietly with God and let your spirit sigh. And with sighs too deep for words, God will understand. And then maybe you can actually start praying for these people. Not pray that they fall off a cliff or get hit by a bus, but actually pray that maybe they can see God's love in other people. Maybe they can see God's love in their life. And maybe even show God's love everywhere they go. Wouldn't that be something? Are you worthy of my love? Am I worthy of yours? Maybe sometimes, probably not all the time. But a better question is, are we worthy of God's love? And the answer is absolutely not. But he loves us all the time anyway, no matter what. If we are called to love God with everything we have, then we're going to want to be more like God. We're going to want to be more like Jesus. And love everybody all the time, no matter what. Because that is what we are called to do. May God's peace be with you always.